What if the trait you are most proud of is the very thing destroying your life? What if your kindness is not being admired, but quietly exploited? What if the reason people cross your boundaries, ignore your needs, and leave you emotionally exhausted is not because you are unlucky, but because you have made yourself too easy to consume? Most people never ask this question. They prefer a comforting lie. They tell themselves that being nice will protect them, that if they are patient enough, generous enough, understanding enough, life will eventually return the favor. But life is not governed by fairness, and human beings are not always moved by gratitude. Many are moved by advantage. This is where Schopenhauer enters the room like a cold wind. He did not see human nature through sentimental eyes. He saw desire, ego, need, competition, vanity, and hidden motives. He understood something brutal. People often love what benefits them, not what is good. And if you do not understand that, your goodness can become the doorway through which others enter to take from you. The dangerous cost of being too nice is not just that people hurt you. It is that you begin to disappear while pretending to be virtuous. By the end of this, you will understand why excessive niceness is rarely pure kindness. More often, it is fear wearing a moral mask, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing love. And once fear begins calling itself goodness, your soul starts negotiating against itself. Being kind is not the problem. Being too nice is, because kindness has backbone. Niceness often does not. Kindness can say yes, but it can also say no without guilt. Niceness says yes when the body is screaming no. Kindness is rooted in strength. Niceness is often rooted in the desperate wish to remain acceptable. That is why nice people are so often drained, resentful, and confused. They think they are giving from the heart, but many times they are giving from anxiety. They are not serving out of freedom. They are bargaining for peace. And people feel that. They may not say it openly, but they feel when your generosity comes with silent fear. They feel when your smile hides discomfort. They feel when your politeness is really self-erasure. And once someone senses that you are willing to abandon yourself to keep the atmosphere calm, a dangerous dynamic begins. You stop being seen as a person with limits. You become seen as a resource. This is the first cost of being too nice. You teach people that your boundaries are optional. Not because people are always cruel, but because most people test reality through behavior. They learn what they can get away with. If every time someone is late, disrespectful, dismissive, selfish, or manipulative, you respond with more patience, more understanding, more excuses, you are not educating them in compassion. You are educating them in access. You are teaching them that you will carry the emotional weight they refuse to carry. You are teaching them that your discomfort is cheaper than their inconvenience. And once that lesson is learned, it is rarely forgotten. This is why the nice person is often shocked later. Shocked when nobody checks on them. Shocked when their sacrifices are not returned. Shocked when the people they help the most are the first to disrespect them. But from a psychological point of view, it is not shocking at all. You train people to receive from you without reverence. You taught them that your loyalty requires no mutuality. You made your presence abundant, your standards invisible, and your forgiveness automatic. Helping is not saving, and being available is not being valued. The second cost is even more painful. Being too nice slowly destroys respect. There is a hard truth many people do not want to hear. Human beings are not only drawn to warmth, they are also drawn to structure, self-possession, and consequence. A person who cannot say no may be liked, but often not deeply respected. Why? Because respect requires form. It requires the sense that there is something in you that cannot be casually bent. Something that does not collapse under pressure. When you constantly yield, constantly adapt, constantly soften your truth to avoid discomfort, others stop seeing you as solid. They may enjoy your company. They may praise your sweetness. They may call you so understanding. But deep inside, they know you will fold. And when people know you will fold, they stop approaching you with care. This is the paradox. The nicer you become in the wrong way, the less delicately the world handles you. Schopenhauer knew that much of social life is driven by self Interest disguised as civility. That does not mean love is impossible. It means illusion is dangerous. If you expect everyone to protect your dignity simply because you have been good to them, you are trusting morality where appetite is operating. And appetite rarely bows to softness unless softness is joined by strength. Forgiveness is not self-abandonment. Compassion is not permission. The third cost of being too nice is hidden resentment. This is where the damage becomes internal. At first, you think you are being generous. Then you notice something darker growing underneath. Irritation, fatigue, quiet bitterness. You begin to feel unseen, but you say nothing. You begin to feel used, but you keep smiling. You begin to feel angry, but you call it understanding. And this is where many nice people become dangerous to themselves, because suppressed anger does not disappear. It ferments. It turns into passive aggression, emotional numbness, private contempt, and sometimes depression. You start hating people for taking what you kept offering. You start feeling guilty for needs you never voiced. You begin to resent the very people you trained to lean on you. And because you built your identity around being the good one, you cannot admit how angry you really are. So the resentment has nowhere to go. This is the emotional debt nobody talks about. When you give what you cannot afford to give, the soul keeps the receipt. It remembers every time you ignored yourself to be loved, every time you laughed off disrespect, every time you overextended just to preserve an image. And one day, the bill arrives in the form of burnout. Jealousy rarely speaks honestly. Neither does resentment. It comes out sideways, through withdrawal, through coldness, through sudden explosions that seem to surprise everyone except your nervous system. People will say, "But you never told me." And often, they are right. You never did. Because you were too busy performing goodness to practice honesty. The fourth cost is that being too nice attracts the wrong kind of people. Not everyone is drawn to innocence for noble reasons. Some are drawn to it because it is convenient. There are people who can smell guilt-prone kindness from a distance. They know who apologizes too quickly, who over-explains, who tolerates confusion, who feels responsible for other people's emotions. And once they find that person, they begin the slow work of emotional colonization. It may look like dependence. It may look like vulnerability. It may even look like affection. But underneath, there is often a power dynamic forming. They become careless because you are careful. They become entitled because you are accommodating. They become vague because you are patient. And while you keep trying to understand them, they keep studying how much you will tolerate. This is why excessive niceness often leads not to peace, but to entrapment. You think your empathy will heal them. Sometimes it only protects their dysfunction. You think your patience will inspire maturity. Sometimes it only removes urgency. You think if you love correctly, they will finally become honest, reciprocal, and self-aware. But many people do not transform because you suffer beautifully. They simply adapt to your tolerance. That is the tragedy of the rescuer. They mistake endurance for love. The fifth and deepest cost is that you begin to betray yourself in the name of goodness. This is the most serious wound of all. Not that others fail you, but that you fail yourself repeatedly until self-betrayal starts feeling normal. You stop trusting your instincts because they seem impolite. You stop honoring your anger because it seems unspiritual. You stop speaking clearly because you do not want to seem difficult. And little by little, your inner world loses authority. When that happens, your identity fragments. Outwardly, inwardly, you are fractured. One part of you wants harmony. Another part is screaming for dignity. One part says, "Be understanding." Another says, "Enough." One part still hopes to be chosen by being good. Another is exhausted by begging for basic respect in elegant ways. Schopenhauer would likely say that much of human suffering comes from illusion, from clinging to the image of how things should be rather than seeing them as they are. And one of the most painful illusions is this: if I am good enough, people will treat me well. No, not always. Some will appreciate it. Some will abuse it. Some will envy it. Some will test it. Some will feed on it. And if your goodness is not protected by discernment, It will become a liability in a world where many people respect what they cannot easily control. This does not mean you should become cold. It means you should become clear about motives, clear about patterns, clear about what repeated behavior means, clear about the difference between someone struggling and someone exploiting, clear about when empathy becomes self-neglect, clear about when loyalty becomes emotional slavery. Real self-development is not learning how to be endlessly pleasant. It is learning how to remain humane without becoming available for misuse. It is learning to hold compassion in one hand and standards in the other. It is learning that your peace is not maintained by endless accommodation, but by honest limits. So what do? You stop confusing guilt with morality. You stop saying yes to what weakens your self-respect. You stop over-explaining boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. You watch patterns more than words. You let disappointment instruct you instead of humiliating you. You understand that every no, spoken with integrity, is an act of inner repair. And above all, you stop trying to earn love through self-erasure, because the right people do not require your disappearance to stay. A mature person does not punish your boundaries. They respect them. They do not feed on your softness. They protect it. They do not become offended when you become clear. They become clearer too. And if someone becomes colder, more manipulative, more distant, or more aggressive the moment you stop overgiving, that was never connection. That was access. There is a difference between being good and being harmless. The world often tells you to be agreeable, pleasant, easy. But there is no dignity in being easy to violate. There is no wisdom in always being the one who bends. There is no virtue in bleeding quietly so others can remain comfortable. Your task is not to become cruel. Your task is to become sovereign, to give without needing approval, to care without losing discernment, to love without kneeling before disrespect, to forgive without reopening the door to harm, to remain warm but not weak, open but not porous, generous but not available to everyone. That is a different kind of kindness, a stronger kindness, a rarer kindness, the kind that does not beg to be chosen because it has already chosen itself. And maybe that is the final truth Schopenhauer forces you to confront. The world will not automatically reward your niceness. It will often test it, measure it, consume it. And if you are not careful, you will spend years calling your suffering virtue, when in reality it was fear of standing alone. But the moment you stop being too nice, something changes. Your words gain weight, your silence gains meaning, your presence stops feeling negotiable. And for the first time, people meet not just your goodness but your center. So be kind, yes, but never so kind that you abandon yourself. Never so understanding that you excuse the inexcusable. Never so giving that you become empty. Because when niceness costs you your dignity, it is no longer goodness. It is surrender. And surrender dressed as virtue is still surrender. If this opened your eyes to the hidden psychology of human behavior, self-respect, and power, stay close. There is much more to uncover, because the deepest battles in life are rarely visible. But once you learn to see them, you stop losing yourself inside them.